Well, welcome everyone to the last in our series of 6 events on the Paramitas and the Bodhisattva ideal. My name's Ratnavua. I'm just going to be hosting. We've got Mahamati, who's going to be giving the talk today. Most of the previous talks, just so you know, are online and are available. So we've got Zach on tech from Dhammachakra, and so Zach will put a link in the chat for links to those previous recordings. You can find them on the Buddhist Center online, and you can I think you could probably just Google Koan for Our Times and it'd show up. So yep, so there's that. With respect to the structure of the event, in case you haven't been to one in the past, what we do is I'm just basically giving a general introduction right now. So my name's Ratnavua, and I'm connecting in from New Zealand. It's 10 o'clock at night here. And it's cold. For some reason, it's taken a turn towards the cold. So I've got a sweatshirt and a vest on just to stay warm tonight. But so I'll just be introducing the event. We've got the talk, which will be about 35 minutes from Mahamati, and after that, we'll have a tea break. While the talk's going on, if you have any questions that come up, do put them into the chat, because after the tea break, what we're going to do is we're going to have Mahamati back, and he'll answer questions that arose during the talk. So you can put them in as they occur, or during the tea break, if they come up, you can put them in then. And so after the tea break, we have the Q&A, and then we just close. And that's the event today. We are very fortunate in that we have translations happening in both Spanish and in Hindi. So we've got Kumar Ajeev from Bodharan, who's going to translate to Hindi, and Paramichita is going to be translating into Spanish. So you can hit the button down on the Zoom and you can get the interpretation if you'd like. I think that's about it at the moment for the general structure of the event. So the only other thing I'd like to mention at this point is just an introduction to Mahamati. So Mahamati was ordained in 1977. I looked up today, which means he's almost 50 years ordained, which is pretty impressive. He was ordained by Sangharakshita, and he spent significant time around Bhante and with Bhante over the years. His name, I was kind of hoping well, either way, he left me to introduce this, but his name can be translated as the mind that sees reality. And so I was thinking that's quite a big name to live up to. And I was curious what his response to receiving his name was, but maybe I'll save that as a question for the Q&A. Maha, of course, usually is a word that can signify shunyata. So Mahamati, and his name's also tied to Manjughosha, the Bodhisattva of wisdom, which is his sadhana practice. He served as an international order convener for many years, which is when I first met him. And he's visited Australia, New Zealand a couple times. He's got significant ties with India, even to this day, very good ties with India. And he's the incoming college chair. So we're looking forward to having him be chairman of the college for the next 5 years, starting in November. So I think what I'll do at this point is bring Mahamati here into the speaker view, and then I'll pass it over to him. So there you go, Mahamati. Oh, one last thing before Mahamati starts, just if people could mute themselves, that would be really helpful. So just mute yourself so that we're only hearing Mahamati. All right.
Good. So good day to everybody, whatever time it is and wherever you are. I'm right here in Ogyen House with an empty seat where Bhante would have been. I'm with Prakasha Mitra and Lalita Naga. In fact, Prakasha Mitra, if you could just come over, because the main thing I can see on the screen is myself, which is lovely to see. And there's Prakasha Mitra. You say hello.
Hello,
I think
everybody.
you can remove
Oh,
so that I don't spend the whole talk
Yep.
looking at myself.
there we go.
That's better. That's great. Okay, so it's quite a skill, isn't it? Like Zoom, particular way that now we give talks. I'm very happy to see everybody either live or if you're watching later. Hello. So I feel Sangharakshita's presence if you have been to Adhisthana, Ogyen House, or even seen pictures online. When you come here, you can still feel his presence 5.5 years later. It's quite tangible. So, good morning, Bhante. So, I thought I'd start by us hearing Sangharakshita's voice, recalling his reading of the Diamond Sutra at the age of 16, or maybe he was 17, maybe just 17. When I read the Diamond Sutra, I knew that I was a Buddhist. So this book epitomizes a teaching of such rarefied sublimity that even arahants, saints who have attained individual nirvana, are said to become confused and afraid when they hear it for the first time. I at once joyfully embraced it with unqualified acceptance and assent. To me, the Diamond Sutra was not new. I had known it and believed it and realized it ages before. And the reading of the sutra, as it were, awoke me to the existence of something I had forgotten. So what might Bhante have found in the Diamond Sutra for it to have had such a profound effect on him? Probably it was the whole text. But for now, let's hear some brief extracts which illustrate the sort of text that he was reading. And before that, I'll mention the title in the original Sanskrit. The Vajrachedika Prajña Paramita Sutra, which translates in English as the discourse on transcendental wisdom that cuts like the diamond thunderbolt. If in the Bodhisattva the notion of a being should take place, he could not be called a Bodhisattva. And why? He is not to be called a Bodhi being in whom the notion of a self or of a being should take place, or the notion of a living soul or of a person. In the second extract from the Diamond Sutra, the Lord asked, "What do you think, Subhuti? Does it occur to the stream winner, by me has the fruit of the stream winner been attained?" Subhuti replied, "No, indeed, O Lord." And why? Because, O Lord, he has not won any dharma. Therefore, he is called a stream winner. And finally, this very famous verse from the end of the sutra. As stars afford to vision as a lamp, a mock show dewdrops, or a bubble. A dream, a lightning flash, or a cloud. So should one view what is conditioned. Let us pause for a moment to consider how amazing, how wonderful that our very own teacher, Sangharakshita, Urgyen Sangharakshita, was able to comprehend the meaning of this sutra. And not only this, how this would then stay with him for the rest of his long life. Much later in life, he said that he found no reason to doubt or revise what he understood then. His direct apprehension of the perfection of wisdom guiding him for the rest of his life. So, this talk is the last talk in the series on the paramitas, the perfections. And as a reminder, paramita literally means that which conveys to the other shore. The other shore being nirvana. The tradition speaks of 6 or sometimes 10 paramitas, but in a sense, there is only one, the Prajña paramita, the perfection of wisdom, the direct realization of reality. So, for example, generosity or dana is only dana paramita when conjoined with the experience of reality. The same goes for ethics, patience, energy, and meditation. So, in the beginning, we practice these paramitas as mundane virtues. In the long run, we wish them to become transcendental virtues, infused with the perfection of wisdom. Sangharakshita seems to have come into this world already so well spiritually endowed that he could receive these teachings, that he could understand them immediately he came across them at the age of 16. Or maybe he was just 17. He wasn't sure exactly. It was either just before or just after his 17th birthday that he came across a copy of the Diamond Sutra. Now, we can look at this list of perfections in 2 ways. As a sequence culminating in the perfection of wisdom, which then transforms the previous mundane 5 virtues into transcendental virtues. Or as a mandala, with the perfection of wisdom in the center, and the other 5 virtues arranged all around, with wisdom gradually illuminating the other 5 virtues more and more. Although I'm not sure there's much difference really, because even if we see this list as a sequence, we will travel the 6 again and again, gradually deepening our vision of each paramita and being transformed by our practice of it. Also, it's better not to think of developing wisdom only through the 6th paramita, as it can be developed and needs to be developed when practicing any of them, all of them. This is reflected in our broad understanding of the Dharma life in Triratna. We see wisdom, or if you like, insight, developing through all aspects of our life, all aspects of our Dharma life. Meditation is one of the avenues, an important avenue, but equally, in the context of the paramitas, we develop wisdom through practice of any and all of them. Put another way, we need to start to live more like a bodhisattva. Even though we don't yet have the perfection of wisdom that is really required to be a bodhisattva. In his commentary on another perfection of wisdom sutra, the Ratnaguna Samchaya Gata, or verses on the accumulation of the precious qualities of the perfection of wisdom, Sangharakshita says, the Ratnaguna Samchaya Gata is concerned with one single subject. Indeed, this one single subject provides the field of inquiry for the whole of the perfection of wisdom. The subject is the career of the bodhisattva. What is a bodhisattva? How does a bodhisattva behave, practice, live? What does a bodhisattva do? So a good place for us to start is with the first paramita, dana, or generosity. Generosity becomes a perfection when we realize the Tri Mandala Parishuddha, which translates as the threefold circle of purity. So, what are the three? These are the one who gives, the gift, and the one who receives the gift. The circle of purity is that the giving comes from a state of egolessness. There is no idea of self that I am giving. There is no idea of a recipient, and there's no idea of the act of giving. As Sangharakshita puts it, the giving is natural, spontaneous, inexhaustible. One gives out of the depth of one's experience of reality. Although at the level of a perfection, this is certainly very elevated, I'm sure we all have an intimation of this when our giving, in whatever way that may be, is natural, or we might say unself-conscious. Now, when you think of the perfection of wisdom, I wonder what first comes to your mind. If you've been practicing within Triratna for a while, or indeed some other Buddhist tradition, it might be the Heart Sutra, which is probably the most well-known perfection of wisdom sutra, together with the Diamond Sutra. And perhaps, especially, the lines come to mind in English: form is only emptiness, emptiness is only form. And you may have noticed in the advertising for today's talk, we have a quotation from Sangharakshita, in which he says, we have to see, we have to experience that rupa and shunyata, form and voidness, conditioned and unconditioned, are one and the same reality. This is our eventual aim. However, we do face a number of pitfalls along the way, a number of possible dangers or definite dangers along the way. And I'm going to mention a few of them now. Because when we think in this way, it's all too easy to have an overly intellectual approach, thinking we understand prajña, or wisdom, through words, when prajña can only be found beyond words, as in the title of Sangharakshita's commentaries on the perfection of wisdom. Wisdom beyond words. I don't want to be discouraging, but I think that if we think we understand, it is quite likely that we don't. We are more likely to start to understand if we approach the perfection of wisdom with considerable humility. As is said in the famous opening lines of the Ratnaguna Samchaya Gata, call forth as much as you can of love, of respect, and of faith. In speaking of the danger of the perfection of wisdom texts and their conceptual way of putting things, Sangharakshita says, we think we've understood because we understand the words. We even understand the ideas. Although they are quite abstruse, we can work them out. Actually, we have not understood anything at all. When we have understood that, well, then we are getting somewhere. That's Sangharakshita. Another pitfall to be avoided is the danger of a premature non-dualism. That is to say, believing that there is no difference for us between samsara and nirvana, the conditioned and the unconditioned. Because even if we do touch on the non-dual, perhaps in meditation, we are unlikely to be in that state all the time. Or, put another way, there may be some vision, but usually there's a lot of transformation to do. If we are taking as our view non-duality, when most of the time that is not our experience, we have simply created another dualism between what we believe to be our experience of non-duality and our actual everyday experience. It is better and in fact necessary that we think in terms of the dualism of conditioned and unconditioned, samsara and nirvana, because prior to enlightenment, that is the situation we are in. This is the approach of the Buddha in the teachings preserved in the Pali Canon, such as in the Arya Pariyesana Sutta, the Noble Quest. The Buddha says, when I was an unawakened bodhisattva, being conditioned, and subject to birth, death, aging, illness, sorrow, I sought happiness in the conditioned. But then the thought occurred to me, why do I seek happiness in that which, like me, is subject to birth, death, aging, illness, sorrow. What if I seek the unborn, the unconditioned? Now, a third pitfall, if we go too much or too early to thinking that there is no difference between the conditioned and the unconditioned, is that we may over-identify with what we believe to be our insights. Of course, there may be insights, and this is wonderful. But if we identify with them as my insight, even my prajña, that's probably not a good sign. Right view is essential before we can have no view at all. It is not possible to go straight from right if we have no view. It is perhaps more likely that we would be suffering from vagueness and confusion, not to mention delusion. This means that study, in which we explore our views in the light of the Dharma, is very important. In the context of prajña, that would obviously include teachings such as Pratyuttara Samutpada, conditioned co-production, the three marks of conditioned existence, the three lakshanas, and shunyata, emptiness. As well as studying Dharma texts, we need to examine our everyday views and see whether they accord with the Dharma. For example, do I really believe that all my actions have consequences? Do I really believe that human enlightenment is possible? Do I fall into blaming others for my circumstances and thinking of myself as a victim? That's a view. Am I open to criticism, or do I think that it's not possible for others, at least sometimes, to see me more clearly than I can see myself? That's a view. Do I think that romance will be the solution to all my suffering? That might be a view. Our aim is always to uncover wrong views, to challenge our limited and fixed views. Only then can we eventually move on from wrong view to right view and finally to perfect view, which in the language of the perfection of wisdom is no view at all. Addressing another pitfall, if approaching wisdom through contemplation of shunyata, which is literally translated as emptiness, we need to take care of nihilism. Although actually shunyata points to the positive, the language can suggest an absence or nothingness. And this has been a continual problem through Buddhist history. In order to counter this, the tradition speaks of reality as tathata, thusness or suchness. This language points to a positive that is indefinable, mysterious, ungraspable, beyond words. Sangharakshita also included in his teaching an evocative rendering of shunyata by the German scholar Herbert Günther, which is the open dimension of being. This is quite often referred to in the order, as this rendering indicates well what shunyata is pointing to in a positive way, the open dimension of being. Going beyond words, the perfection of wisdom is often better approached through the language of symbol and metaphor. The open, vast, infinite blue sky is often the image that we take, and we can contemplate the blue sky in and outside of meditation. Also, some people like to lie on the ground outside, if in the right place and the right time, to see maybe a cloudless blue sky, and maybe also in the blue sky, clouds drifting across, which represent the arising and passing away of all things. This seeing is the essence of the perfection of wisdom. What is being pointed at here is a state of freedom, a liberation from all fixed, limiting views whatsoever. And then there is the image of the Bodhisattva appearing out of the blue sky, form arising from emptiness, which is ultimately no different from form. The Bodhisattva that we see may have a crown and be adorned with beautiful jewels, silks, and ornaments. And traditionally, these are said to represent the paramitas. Before we finish, let us come back to the title of this series, A Koan for our times, and two of the questions that were posed at the start of this series. How is the creation of spiritual community relevant to wider society? What would a genuine, adequate, and radical response to the cries of the world look like? I spent the month of September in Spain at Guhiloca, our men's ordination retreat center in the mountains within sight of the Costa Blanca. 14 of us lived there for a month in more or less perfect harmony. During this period, 10 men who had arrived as mishras were ordained. Often we visited the stupa at Guhiloca, one of several stupas around the world, which enshrine ashes of Dada Rinpoche, one of Sangharakshita's teachers who, he said, he regarded as a bodhisattva. Around the stupa is the motto for the school that Dada Rinpoche founded in the 1950s. Cherish the doctrine, live united, radiate love. If the paramitas, and in particular, the perfection of wisdom, is to make any difference in the world, this is surely a very good motto for us in Triratna, and would make some difference to the wider society and the wider world. Cherish the doctrine, live united, radiate love. When he explained the meaning of radiate love in this motto, Sangharakshita said, to radiate means, according to the dictionary, to emit from a center. The center is the middle point, and a point is defined as that which has position without magnitude. The choice of this word, Sangharakshita goes on to say, is therefore very meaningful. We can radiate love only from the middle point of our being, from egolessness, from shunyata, from that point within ourselves which has position without magnitude. So that, I thought, would be a fitting way to close this talk on the sixth paramita, Prajña paramita, with a true perfection of wisdom teaching. We can radiate love only from the middle of our being, from egolessness, from shunyata, from that point within ourselves, which has position without magnitude. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahamati. Thank you very much for that. That was great. Sorry about the kind of the internet connection thing, but I think when you turned your video off, I think the audio was working. Only a few times where it skipped out. So I think we caught the rest of your talk. So great. Good. So just a reminder to everyone, we'll take a bit of a break right now, come back on the hour perhaps. And just a reminder that we've got an opportunity for questions and answers after the break. So if you would put those questions and answers in the chat, then we'll go through them and we'll try to answer them all, but it just depends how many questions we have, but we'll put them in the chat. And also just that there is a donation link that Zach put in at the start of the chat. Maybe we can get him to put it in again. So if you'd like to make a donation, which would go to the India Dharma Trust, which supports the ordination process in India and the order members that run that, that's where the donation for this event will go to. It also helps support the Buddhist Center Online, which is hosting this event. So on that point, take a break, have a leg stretch, get a cup of tea, think about if you have any questions, and we'll see you in about 14 minutes. Okay, thanks very much. I think where I'd like to start with the questions and answers, and someone just put this in the chat box too, is just that the point where it was really interesting where you started cutting out. Well, it wasn't interesting because you started cutting out, but the point you were getting on was the point of vision and transformation and this idea of moving from mundane to transcendental virtues. In that section, kind of, I think people didn't get to hear fully what you had to say on that topic. So I was wondering if we could revisit that just a little bit.
What would you like to know about it?
Well, I guess in a way, I'm trying to see where the point was. Your point was the over-identification with identifying with our insights and thinking that, it's my insight or my wisdom. And you just said that a good antidote to this was thinks in terms of both vision and transformation. So
yeah, that's right. And well, we have the same in the Eightfold Path, the Noble Eightfold Path. You start with vision, and then it's a transformation. It's a different list of the perfections, but it's the same idea that, well, in fact, with the Eightfold Path, you have the mundane Eightfold Path and the transcendental Eightfold Path. So you can see the same with the perfections. But regarding transformation, I suppose I was particularly wanting to place the perfection of wisdom within the context of the other 5 paramitas, and to suggest it doesn't really mean that much on its own. The idea of having perfection of wisdom as though we just had that perfection, it wouldn't really mean anything, because our lives are lived out in body, speech, and mind. We are embodied beings living in the world. So just the idea that we had somehow this perfect wisdom, if it hadn't touched our body, speech, and mind and transformed, it wouldn't really mean much. So I think also what I was getting at, certainly how I prefer to think, I feel very cautious to speak about my insight or in the sense of, so this is something that I've got, that I kind of own and possess, and something that is fixed, which would be the complete opposite of what we're actually talking about, because nothing is fixed. So whatever we have seen, we need to keep on seeing it again and again, deepening our understanding, and that understanding, and quite actively looking for that understanding to inform the rest of our lives. And so that's why I said you can see the perfection of wisdom as in the center of the mandala, sort of gradually infusing the other 5 perfections.
Yeah, thanks. That's great. Another question that came up that I thought was I was interested in too was just someone was asking if you could just say a little bit about your relationship with Manjughosha and the practice of the Manjughosha Stuti Sadhana and how that connects you with the practice and perfection of wisdom.
Well, Manjughosha, the Bodhisattva of wisdom, Manju meaning gentle and Ghosha voice, gentle voice one, was the figure that Sangharakshita gave me to meditate upon when he conducted my ordination. So I suppose first and foremost, for me, Manjughosha is my connection with the Bodhisattva principle or the Bodhisattva ideal, or it's a way to connect on a daily basis with a higher, deeper vision. And for me, like with all the figures, he is the Bodhisattva of wisdom, but when we do the practice, and in fact the verses that are given to recite in the practice, the sadhana that I do, emphasizes equally his kindness. Obviously, the speech is part of that. And it's quite a kind of subtle effect, I guess, although sometimes it feels very powerful. It's gradual. I like Sangharakshita is quoted somewhere saying that we measure our progress in inches, not miles. But I would say quite a few inches have been brought about by the grace of Manjughosha, a little bit deeper understanding of the Dharma life and a little bit of transformation. Every day that I'm in the company of Manjughosha is different. I would say I learn something every morning, and for the last couple of days, for example, I've been reflecting on the value of being completely free from remorse, feeling that one's life, I would like to feel, and I would like others to feel, that I'm living the best life that I can within my limitations. And so when I meditate on Manjughosha, and this would be the case whatever Buddha or Bodhisattva figure anybody would meditate on, I know that his consciousness is completely without remorse. He's completely in the flow of the Dharma life. Well, he's a bodhisattva. He's a Buddha, or he's a Buddha in bodhisattva form. He's completely in the flow. He embodies all the wisdoms, the different wisdoms, as in the 5 Buddha mandala. He has all the paramitars, and not only this inspires me, but it actually directly affects me. I feel I'm in his company, and I feel that his consciousness starts to pervade my consciousness. My limited consciousness starts to be touched by his consciousness. So yeah, it's a pretty. I also do regularly mindfulness of breathing and metta bhavana, the practice on the contemplation of the 6 elements. But I would say that every day I meditate on Manjushri, Manjugosha, and gradually that has an effect.
And your name, I was reading earlier today, is actually another name for Manjugosha. Did I read that correctly?
Yeah. Well, what happened when Sangharakshita ordained me? I hadn't been around Triratna for very long, and I didn't know very much at all about the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And at point of ordination, the person being ordained is asked by their preceptor, do they feel a particular connection with any figure? But when Bhante asked me that question in the private ordination, just myself with him, I said something like, please choose a figure for me. So I didn't choose. And he chose Manjushri for me to meditate on. And he had already, presumably, he'd already chosen my name. I don't suppose he came up with it just then. So he'd chosen the name Mahamati. So yeah, Mahamati is a figure, particularly in the Lankavatara Sutra, which is a very important sutra in Zen Buddhism. But it's said to be one of the names of Manjushri. So yeah, so that's true.
Yep. And Maha is another word for like something being infused with the spirit of shunyata, spirit of openness. Yeah. So your name kind of means like mind of shunyata almost, or mind that's been purified by the perfume of shunyata. Was that kind of a bit daunting when you got that name?
Well, I probably should have felt daunted, but I think it probably I wasn't in a position to fully understand at that time what the name meant. I sometimes think of, I translate to myself, the name means the mind, mati, that sees emptiness or sees the open dimension of being, or whatever, however one would explain it. Because, but as you say, maha, if you put maha with karuna, it means not just compassion, but great compassion, which is compassion conjoined with emptiness, or maha metta or maha maitri. So yeah, if you actually put maha in the Mahayana with any other word, it can mean not just big or great, but it actually means infused with emptiness. I mean, in a way, the Mahayana, the great way, it means the great way, but also it means the way of the perfection of wisdom, the way of, using that word. The literal translation of shunyata is emptiness. Shunya meaning, well, in modern Indian languages, shunya means zero.
I wanted to thank you too for choosing to give your talk, even though your video's off the moment. People would have seen prior to that, the start. The picture of Bante's chair and your invocation of him in the beginning, and your kind of just reference to the atmosphere in Ergian House, which it is quite tangible, and lots of people mention that. So I would encourage people, if they've got an opportunity, to visit Ergian House, I guess, at this point in time, whenever they get an opportunity. But one of the other questions was around Bante sometimes having translated Prajña as direct intuitive knowledge, and someone wanted to. Do you have anything to say about that and the connection between wisdom and intuition?
Well, if it's a wisdom beyond words, we're going to need some other faculty to come into play. Whatever exactly one means by intuition, that would be part of it. The imagination. Yeah, it depends what exactly the question I had in mind by intuition. But I think, another way in which Sangharakshita, it's not his own translation, but it's actually Herbert Gunther again, who I quoted, like the open dimension of being, wisdom as the, aesthetic appreciation.
Yeah.
There's analytical aesthetic appreciation, and one of them is Prajña, and one of them is Jnana. It's just aesthetic appreciation. So I think, whether we talk about intuition or imagination or aesthetic appreciation, for me, the important, in Sangharakshita's teaching and tradition and my understanding, is whatever we're looking for is non-conceptual. So I didn't mention that word, like non-conceptual, but going beyond words is going beyond concepts, because the direct apprehension of reality cannot be accommodated by words, because words are limited to, for example, time, past, present, and future. But in reality, as it were, past, present, and future, they are helpful, sometimes called operational concepts. That means they help us to get through our day, past, present, and future. But if we actually try to find the past as distinct from the present and the future, we'll see that they are ideas or thoughts in our own mind. They're the thoughts of the past, thoughts of the present, thoughts of the future. And the same with space, that that's why, say, the open dimension of being or boundlessness, you could say, and sometimes we reality or shunyata, they're all words, aren't they? Or thusness. We also talk of boundlessness. It goes, there is no boundary. So sometimes in meditation, for example, I will take my mind to the furthest reaches of space, as it were. Sort of, we talk about the infinite blue sky as an image. I will take my mind to that edge, and then I will find I cannot make sense of that with my conceptual mind. Because, this is in a way something that a child might do lying in bed, trying to work out, where is the edge of the universe? But they're really good questions. So like, well, where is, there can be no edge, because beyond the edge, there's something else. We know that. But I think the benefit of that is it can take one into a non-conceptual consciousness. So yeah, whether one calls that intuition, I appreciate the question. It's probably trying to point for, well, what is it point at? What are we looking for? Or what faculty? Or how are we going to go beyond words? So we need intuition, imagination, aesthetic appreciation. It means aesthetic appreciation means we're not seeing things just as objects. In a way, they are just, well, it's more like we're enjoying everything without grasping onto it, because we directly see that they can't be grasped. In a way, there's two aspects. There's a not grasping, and there's also the going down of the boundary that we usually experience between subject and object. That also has to go. And that's what also the blue sky image is getting at. That in the blue sky, there are no divisions. And actually consciousness, non-dual consciousness, is a consciousness where the boundaries that we normally identify as me and outside and inside and self and other, it's all gone down. So whatever we call it, it is a direct, non-conceptual apprehension or seeing, I guess. So I don't know. I mean, in a way, I couldn't really answer the question a lot about intuition, because I'm not quite sure what is being meant there. But I could at least say something about that which goes beyond words.
And I think you've answered it well. I think where that question comes from for me is the idea that intuition is beyond the senses in a way. You know, it's beyond the direct, immediate kind of observation around us. And so, and that's the connection with wisdom, is that wisdom also goes, starts beyond, goes beyond. So I think that was a good answer. Yeah, thanks. One last thing before we close was I was wondering about Bante's aphorism about more and more of less and less. You've talked a little bit tonight about, going beyond the intellect and going beyond words and stuff. But I think Bante also asked us to kind of focus in on what's the really, what are the burning questions and issues in our lives, and what are we really practicing? I got this quote: just real questions spring out of your own experience. I was just wondering if you might say a little bit about more and more of less and less in terms of this perfection of prajna.
Yeah, I'd like to answer that. But what was that about? Does this question spring out of your own experience?
Well, he was just, it was in the same paragraph where I got the aphorism, but he was just saying that the real questions in your life that drive you spring out of your own experience. They come from one's own conflicts, even one's own conflicts, I think he said.
Oh yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, well, for me, I love that aphorism, more and more of less and less. And one thing is, we have so much in Triratna. We have so much from Sangharakshita that certainly I would encourage anybody to go deeper within the practices that we have and not flit around, sort of looking at different maybe videos on YouTube and like that might sort of temporarily give one some kind of stimulation, because more and more of less and less means actually finding a path of practice. It partly means finding a path of practice and deepening it. So that's the first point I would make. And secondly, I really like what the questioner said about finding our own questions. I think that is quite essential. In my own experience and observation of others, everybody unfolds in a different way. We all have to find our own unfolding. From that point of view, I would be a little bit cautious about too many led meditations, following others. Just a little bit cautious. I know they can be very helpful, but also we need to find our own way, and everybody unfolds, whether in meditation or outside of meditation, differently. What Sangharakshita sometimes called the inner guru. The inner guru. So I think to find our inner guru is very, very important. But yeah, I mean, one time Sangharakshita said, famously perhaps, we only need a line or two from the Dhammapada. That's enough to gain enlightenment. So I'm sure that's true. And he also said in this connection, however, if we want to communicate the Dharma to others, we need to know quite a lot more, because, and I know I feel I need to do more and more study, because in order to communicate well, we need to know quite a lot, but you don't need to know that much. But more and more of less and less, well, I'd say mindfulness of breathing, metta bhavana, that would be a good start. Spiritual friendship, spiritual community. Maybe more and more of less and less means having a few really close friends, going deep. Is going to be different for different people. Maybe read the same book. We finished it, we thought it was such a good book. Instead of like putting it on the shelf and forgetting about it, read it again. And I know quite a few people do that. Like if you find a really good book, read it again. And in connection with this, one thing that I've come to understand more, I hope, is we have to reflect. Without reflection, we won't get anywhere, hardly, or nowhere, we won't. We have to reflect on the Dharma. Well, the more that we reflect, the more that we will grow. So I'll put that positively. That's what I've found. Reflection is so wonderful, that you take a teaching or you take an experience in life, or you see, maybe we see how we acted, maybe how we reacted, maybe we got angry or upset. So then we reflect, well, why did I get angry? Why did I get upset? What's going on? Reflect on it. Or reflect on that study. So yeah, more and more of less and less is a great teaching. And just one more of Sangharakshita's is another of our favorites in Triratna, no further teachings, only no higher teachings, only deeper understandings. No higher teachings, only deeper understandings. Anyway, I will stop there.
Well, and I kind of want to go back to the aphorism you just coined and finish. I like the one about no higher teaching, not higher teachings, just deeper understandings. But I like the aphorism, the more we reflect, the more we grow. I thought that was really lovely too. You just offered that to us. So so just kind of lifting that up. Yeah, we do need to end. Just a big thank you, Mahamati, for joining us and sharing your wisdom and your clarity around this this rather difficult of the paramitas. Is probably the most difficult one to speak about. So maybe we'll get you to turn your video back on so that people can see you at the end. Yep. So a big thank you. And so we'll probably see a bit more of you too over the next 5 years. I'm sure we'll see you online on more than one occasion, sharing more. And I wanted to thank, just to close this event, this is the last of our series, but I wanted to thank everyone on the Dhammachakra team for the support, the publicity, the hosting, the everything. Zach's here personally today. A big thank you to Zach. We've had others hosting previous ones. And also a big thank you to Akasa Jyoti, who's the secretary of the college and just does so much amazing good work behind the scenes and really pulled this series together for us, which was great. And does, provides good questions from time to time too. So, so big thank you to Akasa Jyoti. And of course, a big thank you to the speakers that we've had in this series who have shared their wisdom and their understanding. So great. So I guess, Mahamati, do you have anything at the end that you want to say?
Oh, thank you to everybody for turning up.
Yeah, great.
It's been great for me to reflect more on this topic, having been asked to give this talk.
And I think I did see in the chats that people were interested in the transcript of it. So I think the recording will be online, and I'm sure there's a transcript available too online. So that should all be there. So we'll end here, and if people want to, they can unmute and say goodbye. Go to gallery view, and I just wish you a good weekend, whether you're starting it, whatever position you are in the midst of it. And yeah, wish you all well.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much, Mahamati. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks everyone for coming.